And we are live. JT here. Welcome to the huddle. The huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are joining us as we stream into our Facebook community, whether you are catching the replay on YouTube, or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my friendly reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. My challenge to you is to go all in, to get laser focused on this conversation. And I guarantee you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will most importantly help you succeed at the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. You know, we connected a few months ago, and I've just really been inspired by her journey. There is just this energy about her that just is, you just want to be around it. My guest in the huddle today is the wide receiver coach at McMaster University. She is also part of our first ever U18 Team Ontario female tackle team. She's also the receiver coach at McMaster for the women's football program, and just honestly, an all-around rock star. My guest in the huddle today is Coach Taylor MacIntyre. How are you today, Coach?
I'm great, JT. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really excited for this conversation and can't wait to jump in.
Yeah, definitely. So, Coach, I just want to take a moment just to share with you that one of the most important lessons I've learned in life is the importance of counting your blessings. And for me, it's a daily practice, right? It's always those reminders, right? To be in the here and the now. And one of the biggest blessings I believe that we can give anyone is our time and energy. So I just feel so blessed that you were able to carve out some time and energy into being here with me and our community today. So once again, Coach, thank you so much for being here.
Really appreciate that. Thanks so much, JT.
Okay, so we'll get kicked off here, pun intended. So one of the things I like to remind people is that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. So I'm curious, what is an interesting fact? I had a coaching colleague that once said, we all have our quirks. What is that interesting fact that maybe a lot of people don't know about you that you would be open to sharing with our community?
So that's a great question. First of all, as a lot of people know, I'm very passionate about football. My interesting fact is the first football jersey I ever owned was a Randy Moss Patriots jersey. I'm a huge New England Patriots fan. I have been since about 2005, so a long time. Just really love that team. And obviously having played wide receiver, I really looked up to Randy Moss. He was the first receiver that I studied actually when he was in Oakland. My dad's a Raiders fan. So I noticed him playing for Oakland, and then he eventually transferred to New England. So I followed Randy Moss to New England. That became my team. So my first jersey was not a Brady jersey, as a lot of people assume or might get for themselves. Tom Brady was a great player as well, just retired, but amazing seeing Brady and Moss do their thing together in New England.
I remember those days. I remember it being very explosive. It was just like, it was poetry in motion, as cliche as that was. So I'm curious, you kind of piqued my interest there. What was it about Randy Moss that, you know, you gravitated to, that you kind of, it sounded like you kind of looked up to him, you know? What was it about? What was it about him?
There were actually a couple things. Just his style of play was very unique. I feel for that time, he was kind of the first to have an attitude in a way and be extremely confident and outgoing with his abilities. And I like to think I am more of the opposite. So, they say opposites attract. I was very intrigued by his mannerisms and how he played the game. Tactically, they have, when you watch Sunday Night Football now or Monday Night Football, Randy Moss is an analyst and they have a segment called You Got Mossed.
Yeah.
And it's just Randy Moss commanding his space as a receiver, making those catches that not very many receivers in the league ever have been able to make. And so just watching him perform at that level week in and week out was just so amazing. So I really enjoyed it.
It sounds like, you did a beautiful job of describing what he was about. And it's almost like he was unique. He celebrated what made him different. And if there's kind of something that attracts you to people like that when they're sort of that comfortable in their own skin.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great point as well.
Okay. So Coach, obviously sport has played an important role for you in your life. I mean, it's still, playing an important role today. So I'm curious, you grew up around sport, you're still involved in sport, you played and have coached, at a high level. I'm curious, what is the one life lesson that you feel you received from sport that you still find yourself applying to your life today?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, as you mentioned, I've been in sports and participated in sports, coached sports my entire life. It's got to be the relationships that I build with either fellow athletes, my fellow coaches, or athletes as a coach. I think just the relationships that sports enhances and brings together, the way that it brings people together. We all have a common goal, a common purpose. We're all working together towards that. Just the camaraderie that sports brings. You can have people from various backgrounds, but at the end of the day, we're all connected through sport. That's something that I learned also living and playing in Germany. I played soccer or football in Germany. But even though I wasn't fluent in German, I did become fluent. But at the beginning, I couldn't understand their language. Playing soccer over there, that was a language of its own. I didn't need to learn the language of German. It was just playing the sport.
Okay. So it sounds like it was sort of that greater sense of community, that belonging, that anyone that's played sport knows how transformational it is and how inclusive it really can be. So I'm curious, why football? Like, why is football? I mean, like you said, you played in Germany, you played football, right? As the majority of the world calls it there. But what drew you to football, American football?
So I don't remember. I've been told as a baby I would watch football with my dad, and babies are attracted to the color red. So I would always follow the red jerseys on the screen. So dad being a Raiders fan, there was a lot of Chiefs games on as well. So I can't say that out loud, but I would often watch the Kansas City Chiefs and follow the red jerseys around. My dad introduced me to football at a really young age. Dad just finished his 34th year of coaching community high school football, just south of London, Ontario. So dad definitely transferred that passion onto me. When I was a young girl, dad would show me how to place my fingers on the laces, kind of bring my arm back and follow through. He wouldn't let me throw the ball incorrectly. He was helping me develop my technique from a young age. And, he always had football on every Sunday, had the CFL on Fridays. So there was a lot of football in the house. And I had always loved sports anyways. I just started watching more of it and asking questions. I'm a very curious person, as are you, JT, I know. So we ask a lot of questions and we want to know details. And so I was asking all these questions and really developed a passion for the game at such a young age. Dad, taught me the basics of football and the fundamentals. And I went on to play in gym class, was often the only girl playing with the boys at recess, leading the way, playing quarterback in grade 8 gym class. Just really enjoyed the sport, and then went on to play high school football as well, the first girl to complete a season at my high school. And then in grade 11 and 12, in my senior years, I decided to give back to the junior program and coach the junior Stampeders. So football has always been a part of my life. So it's just, I'm so excited to be back in the football community and kind of having that full circle. And my dad has always been my number one supporter in the sport.
I love that. And first and foremost, my biggest hope is that, if when my daughter's, in future speaks about how you speak about your dad, because I can really get a sense of how much love and how cherished those memories are for, you know, um, with your dad. And what I really loved about your story is, how poetic, again, talk about life being all divine timing. Yesterday was International Women's Day. And we're talking about how you were, quote unquote, the big hashtag yesterday is break the bias. And the interesting part is we're having these discussions today. But I mean, that was a few years ago, right? Where you were starting to do the illogical. You were starting to, go against the grain. And that's the part I love. Like, I love that you had that sort of confidence, like, hey, I like football. I like playing quarterback, and I'm going to go play. I don't care what other people think or what people are going to say. So I'm curious, like, what was that like? Because it was a different time, right? When you were playing, high school football as junior age athlete.
It was definitely a different time. It was back in 2005, 2006 era.
Mhm.
As you said, talking about International Women's Day yesterday and break the bias, I actually posted something on my Instagram feed dedicating, I guess, where I'm at now and my football journey to my dad. He was the one back when I was 13 years old, getting ready to play high school football. He broke the barriers and broke that bias for me. After I played 2 seasons back to back years, there were 4 or 5 other girls that also came through the program. And I remember dad going up to these young ladies that were interested and talking to them and saying, hey, my daughter played, you can play too. And so just trying to make it so inclusive and inviting for all genders and everyone to come out and play. So often I met these girls, when I was in university or even after university, I would go back to my high school, introduce myself, and just most importantly, thank them for having the courage to follow their passion and to break those barriers, because other girls, younger girls, whether they're at a high school game, maybe it's little sisters of the brothers that are playing, but there's always younger kids watching. And I think it's just as important for younger girls to see females playing and females coaching as it is for younger boys. So regardless of the child's gender or age, it's important to see that representation and having females playing and coaching in football.
I love everything you're sharing, right? And what really resonated with me is you gave hope. And I was just remembering, as you were saying, about you posting on Instagram, I saw this picture of you and another, not different high school that you went, and you were the picture. And how cool is that, right? Where they get to see someone that was blazing the trail, 15 years ago, and really showing people what's possible when you go all in, right? When you truly bet on yourself. And that's, I believe, is the greatest gift we can give someone, right? The hope for a brighter tomorrow.
Well, thanks, JT, for saying that. I do appreciate it. And honestly, at the time, I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about being a trailblazer or anything. It was just, I had a passion for a game, and my dad gave me the confidence and the knowledge to play. And so when I got to high school, I thought, well, I'm going to play. There's nothing that says I can't. Um,
Yeah.
so just, following my passion and wanting to play in a sport that I loved and that I loved playing, that was kind of, when you're 13, 14 years old, that's all you want to do is play.
Yeah. Great reminder of the simplicity of kids, right? The beauty. And that's one thing I've realized is kids, one of their greatest gifts of why they're so happy and joyful and at peace is because they only know the here and the now, right? They just play. So it's a great reminder. I love that, coach. So I'm curious, we met a few months ago, and it was interesting, right? Where, I think it was around that time where you did the Instagram takeover. I think it was for UEFA. And you kind of chronicled kind of like a day in your life, which was really cool. And I remember just saying, I love what you're doing, keep doing it. And then from that conversation, I remember asking you, hey, what about, we're thinking about Team Ontario this U18, this female, it could be the first ever team. And I remember asking you, and you're like, yes. Like that was one thing that I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. Like just that energy. Like, so I'm curious, what made you just jump in? Like, it was almost like you just said yes, and is that old improv rule? Like, yeah, what inspired you to just dive right in?
It was realizing that an opportunity that I didn't have was now presenting itself. And so to be able to be a part of that and to give that to the U18 girls throughout Ontario right now, I wish this program would have existed 15 years ago when I was at that age and I could have played, but it was just the opportunity to be a part of this new program. And again, just to show younger ladies what's possible. You can play tackle football. By having this program, we're creating an opportunity for that. And we're really breaking additional barriers in the sport. I know I'm moving too far ahead, but eventually I would love to see it get down to the grassroots level as well, right? I think we should have a U10 girls team, right? And a U14 girls team. Like, let's start a football culture for girls. It's no longer just a game for boys and men, right? So flag football has always been popular among girls, but I think it's time to offer that tackle component because girls can play too.
Yeah, and yes, they can. It's amazing. Again, we're, as we have this conversation, as this year, as we embark right on the Ontario Spring Football League, where now we have a number of clubs that have identified and said, no, we are going to be running this, female teams, right? I think it's amazing too, because it's almost at that, like you said, that grassroots for the first national championship, right? That will be happening later this summer, which you'll be a part of. So I'm curious, it seems like this last year's been a whirlwind, right? Like you got into this apprenticeship program at McMaster, right? You're a Team Ontario coach. You're coaching the women's team at McMaster too. What has it been like, sort of just going all in, as cliche as our Team Ontario mantra is?
No, I love it because that's exactly what you have to do. And I feel like I've tried to do that to the best of my ability. When I first got hired with McMaster, I was so excited just to be back coaching football, right? There was almost 10-year break there where I wasn't coaching or playing or involved with football. I'd played flag football and, thrown the ball here and there, but it's not really the same as an organized culture. So I was just really excited to get back into it. Opportunities have just been surfacing. And my dad has the saying, don't look back and say, I wish I had a. So when something happens, an opportunity presents itself, I do my best to manage my work, my personal life, my football, so that I can say yes, so that I am available for these opportunities. Because I think not only does it help me as a coach grow, the more people I network with, the more systems I learn, the more players I get to work with. I think I have something to contribute. And I love being that person that younger girls or younger boys or anyone can come up to and ask advice or ask about my journey or, hey, how can I get involved? I love answering those questions and I guess opening the doors for especially more women to get involved in football. So it has definitely been a whirlwind. As you say, we're back into spring ball with the Mac men, Mac women's. Yeah. We are in flag playoffs. So we have a tournament this Saturday at Laurier. Championships are next Saturday at Mac. And then we start our ID camps in May with the U18 team. So from there, we have our ID camps. Then we have a development camp in June. Then we have nationals in Regina at the beginning of July. So it's definitely an exciting time, but I'm just living off adrenaline, I think. It's just work, eat, sleep, football, work, eat, sleep, football. That's kind of how my life's going, but I'm enjoying it and I'm supported by my family and friends. And I honestly couldn't do it without them.
I love that you shared that. And one thing I really heard from you as you were talking about was, and I think anyone that's played or coached at a high level understands that, right? Like what I really heard from you is you were willing to pay a price, right? Like you were willing to organize your daily activities between work, personal life, relationships, health, coaching to make it happen. And I think that anyone is able to do this. The question I always like to ask people is, and again, there's no right or wrong answers. Are you willing to pay that price to because as you said, it does take some sacrifice to make it happen.
And I think when someone finds something that they're passionate about, it's easy to make that sacrifice because it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like you're working 16 hours a day, you know? So.
And I think you give a powerful reminder there. And I love the simplicity of that, right? It's learning to live from our heart. And I'm not talking about that physical one, but that subconscious, right? Like you talked about, like things that you're passionate about, things that energize you, things that make you feel enthused, that just light you up. Like when you start to live from that place and you base your decisions on that, it's a beautiful place to live from. So one thing you mentioned, I know we had a couple great meetings with to talk with people about, here's what we're doing with TMO, the U18 female program. And one thing that really stuck out to me, and I loved it because I'm a big language guy. I'm a firm believer in, like, words are powerful, right? Your thoughts become things, and it's really powerful. And I love how you shared that football is a male prevalent sport. And I remember when you said that, I was listening there, I'm like, that's amazing. And that is so true. So I'm curious, from your perspective, you've seen this from a number of perspectives. What needs to happen for the game to become more diverse, inclusive, and equitable? Because, as you know, part of our mission at Football Ontario is to provide football for all. So what would you say from your experiences is like, what needs to happen next to provide more opportunity?
Thank you so much for asking that question. I think it's a topic that does need to be further discussed, and we need to take action. I think there are numerous opinions about this, and I'm just happy that conversations are now, taking place more often about opportunities for women in football. First of all, when I said that football is a male prevalent sport, I have to give credit to Coach Grant at McMaster University. He's the one that came up with that. So basically what we mean by that, or my understanding of it, is football is a male prevalent sport, which means in the past, there has been more males than females or other genders involved in the sport. So as a male prevalent sport, it implies that that is what has been the past, but it's not what's in the future. And so that implies change. And so by saying that football is male prevalent, it opens up the door for other genders and other identities to be involved with the game as well.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's that coming back to, I love that, because I have my own strong and powerful little girl here who I just, she just believes that she can do anything. And I want to foster that in her, because I think that the longer we can do that, the world, I think, has an interesting way and programming of, getting us to think about what's realistic, what's safe, what's comfortable, what's logical, right? So I really want to foster that. So, what would you like to see happen, like, going forward? What would you like? We're having this conversation, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. What would you like to see?
I think, honestly, that's a hard question to answer. I think there are some logical next steps that we could take, but I think overall, the pace where football is changing is so rapid right now that we could say this might happen in 5 years, but in reality, it might be 6 months down the road, which is definitely a very positive change, but it's hard to predict on timelines. So I think it's really great that a lot of youth community programs are starting up programs for girls and for other genders that are not male dominated. By opening up the option of flag football to females, but also tackle football, I think that can only help the sport and make the sport more inclusive. Next steps, I think it would be great to have more high schools involving girls in the programs as well. I think that's an important step. I was very fortunate to have the support at my high school, but I know, hearing from, some of the other people that I've talked with, the other female players, they haven't been as fortunate. I know a couple weren't allowed to play at their high school. They said it was only for boys. So having those barriers are extremely difficult, especially in 2022. So I think we need to break down those barriers. And I think it's just an education piece. I think there needs to be additional education about how females have a role to play in football and how we athletically, physically, we can play this sport as well. I'm not sure, depending on the age, we have co-ed soccer from a young age. Why can't we do that with football? Right? There's a certain age where scientifically, genetically, anatomically, men's and women's bodies differ. But at a young age, why can't we open that opportunity up for girls to play football as well? JT, you would know better than me, but I'm not sure what the division starts at. But if there's like a U10, right? Why can't girls play in a U10 division or a U12 or a U14?
No, and you bring up an amazing point. You bring up a great point. And again, it's just food for thought, right? And I love how you say what's happened in the past is no indication of what can happen moving forward. I think back to my experience as a high school educator for 15 years. And I remember some of the biggest school spirit days were around what they used to call powder, which is not, but it's just, that's what people was called. But when we had these days, and at one of my high schools, we actually used it as the last day of school, an opportunity just to celebrate, being active, celebrating, right, leaders in our school. And the interesting part, like you said, I've seen games before where there are senior teams, and I coached at some pretty good high schools where there were some female athletes that could play, that could start. And we're not talking like these are like provincially, nationally recognized high schools, right? Like my last one was there, and there were girls that were playing there that could start at positions. So I love everything you're sharing.
Thank you for sharing that as well. I think that's so important. And it's just changing the conversation and adding that educational piece as well. And I think we started to see that, but we obviously have a lot more work to do.
Yeah, I agree. So one of the things that I'm curious about is I'm a firm believer that it's easy to talk about change, right? Like it's easy and it's a hope or wish sometimes, right? And again, I think people to a good degree have the best intentions. Change isn't always sunshines and rainbows, right? Change can feel really uncomfortable. It can not only for us, but it can make other people, right? When you're challenging the status quo. So I'm curious, has it been easy for you to be a change maker? Like, is it, because I think sometimes people can look at someone like yourself and go, well, Taylor's just, special and she just is able to do it. Like I could never do what she's doing. Like, has it been easy? And if, yeah, what has that been like for you?
Yeah, so it hasn't always been easy, but at the end of the day, football is my passion.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to enjoy my passion and to be involved in that and to help others that have the same passion to enjoy that as well. So it hasn't always been easy. Obviously, starting my journey back in high school, playing high school football, 13 and 14-year-old boys aren't always the kindest. So I did have some learning and growing to do there, just focusing on myself. My dad always helped me. Of course, I could talk with him about anything and anything that I was dealing with, but going through and coaching, that was a bit of an easier step because going back to the junior receivers, I had already been through the program. I knew the playbook. I knew the techniques. I knew how to teach them. So that wasn't much of a struggle. And now I just think at McMaster, Coach Potasic and Coach Grant have created this opportunity to showcase female coaches and female football coaches and give them an opportunity to give back to the McMaster community. I'm sure for them, it hasn't been an easy process as well, like challenging the status quo and being leaders within the OUA and within Canada to create this first program of its kind. I'm sure that hasn't been easy, but I really hope and I know that they know the benefits and it's worth it in the end. They both have daughters as well, and they definitely want to be able to support their daughters when as they continue on in whatever endeavors they want to pursue as well. So I think it's just it's a great family to be a part of. It hasn't always been easy, but overall, when you have the support system that you do, you don't really look back. You just keep pushing forward for the next generation and for the next wave of women and girls to come through and play or coach in football as well.
Yeah, I love that, right? And I love just, again, I appreciate you being so open and honest about your journey. And it was interesting, like as you were sharing and you're talking about Coach Potasic and Coach Grant, I remember asking Coach Grant in the huddle, like, what has been like the biggest aha from having you and Coach Ruler around? It's like, he can coach. And there was just like this one where he just said, and you could tell there's this, here's a common confidence. Here's someone who's played at the highest level, has won great cups, and was just saying that Coach MacIntyre and Coach Ruler, they bring a perspective, and sometimes they can communicate in a more effective way than I can. So it was just really interesting to hear his perspective and just to hear say that no, it's helping us because we're actually able to reach more athletes and in a different way.
Definitely. And some of my mentors, the NFL has done a great job bringing in female football coaches and female staff through the NFL's pathway for women in football. And I think one of them has a saying that the players, it doesn't matter what gender their coach is, if they can coach, they're going to listen.
Yeah.
So if you can relate to a player, if you can help them be better at the end of the day, they're going to listen to you.
And again, it comes back to that idea of, people, if they feel like you have their best interests at heart, right, they will gravitate to you. So I'm curious with that. Again, you've coached like a number of high level athletes. Like, is there something that you do as a coach to really help build that connection and trust with the athletes you work with?
Yeah, so I really, from the get-go, just try and be as honest and transparent as possible. I let them know that I'm here to help them. And there's always that open line of communication, and the communication goes both ways. If they need something from me, if I need to do better explaining something, if they need me to draw up a play instead of just explaining it, they know that door to communication is always a two-way street. And I'm always very honest and transparent. If I see something that I think could improve their game or their route that they're running, I will let them know. And I'll let them know I'll ask them if they have any questions, because I think that's important as well. You're not in today's world of coaching. I know I'm a new coach, but I've done some research on this. In today's world of coaching, I believe it's important to have a conversation with players and to have them really understand what you're trying to get them to do, and to have the opportunity for them to ask any questions back and to provide that coaching feedback. So I really value that as well.
I love that. And what I really heard from you, Coach, again, was just putting that player and the athlete first, right? Like really treating them as a whole person. And I think it's a great reminder that we are in a different time, right? Where we all in today's age, we feel more empowered. We know it. And the day and age of screaming and yelling and, of just berating athletes. And I mean, I say that as, sort of the old way of doing it. And hey, have I had moments like that early in my coaching career? Absolutely. But I feel like today's athlete, you're not going to get the best out of them if you coach them like that. It doesn't fly anymore. So I'm curious, Coach, what this actually sort of piqued my interest as we were thinking today. So this year with the national championships, we're going to an iteration, right? Where football traditionally has been 12 versus 12. Where now we're going to an iteration, right, of 6 versus 6. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on these different iterations of football? We saw that when we first met in person at the Fall Cup, we saw 6 versus 6, we saw 9 versus 9, 12 versus 12. What are your thoughts on that?
I think at the end of the day, if you can open up the opportunity for more people to play the sport, that's all that matters. And so by opening up 6 versus 6, that allows for, I guess, more teams to be involved, more competition. But it's also very interesting when it comes to the technique and the strategy of the game. And so I think that's something that will also challenge the coaches, which will be very interesting, is coaching receivers at 6 versus 6. Yeah. But I'm really excited for the opportunity. And I think the players will be excited for this opportunity as well. There's a lot of different techniques and fundamentals that you can coach. Obviously, in 6 versus 6, everything is different compared to 12 versus 12. But at the end of the day, if we're if the purpose of doing 6 versus 6 is to have more teams involved and more ladies playing, at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Spoken like a true high-level athlete and coach, right? Like the big purpose here is provide opportunities. How we get there, right, is really none of our concern. So here's one of my purposes in life is I love stretching people. I love challenging them to think bigger, to think in possibility. And I know that that's something you do anyways. So I'm curious, I know we touched on it earlier. Let's say we're having this conversation and it's just about you, a year from now, 3 years from now, 5, 10 years from now, let's say you have Queen Midas's touch, right? Everything you touch turns to gold and everything has come to be. What would you like to see happen in your life? Like, where would you like to be?
Wow, what a question. And I say that because if you would have asked me a year ago, I wasn't a football coach even a year ago.
Yeah.
Right. So talk about being all in this whirlwind of the past year. It's so hard for me to predict the next couple years. I have been asked this question quite a few times. And honestly, what I always just say is I'll continue to take every opportunity as it comes forward. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how women in football, female football coaches, I don't know how that's going to play out. Maybe we'll have, I hope we do 10 female football coaches in the CFL next season. Right? We don't really know the opportunities. Hopefully, all the OUA teams can adopt a women's coaching apprenticeship program for female coaches or non-male identifying coaches to have the opportunity to coach in the OUA or across youth sports. So it's really hard to predict. I don't really have an answer as, like I say, so much has changed in the last 9 months. It's so hard to predict the future, but I'm really excited for it. I love the direction that female football coaches have the opportunity in Canada. I'm just really excited for whatever's next.
Well, I love that, Coach. Again, anyone that has been around you, anyone that's maybe even listening to this or you're seeing you for the first time, you do have this amazing energy. And one thing I'll share with you is I love that simplicity of that, right? Like you've mentioned opportunity multiple times here. And I just love how you embrace saying yes and, right? That old improv rule. And it's interesting that it's easy to say yes and to things that don't serve us, that don't get us towards where we want to go. But I love how you always say yes and to things that help drive the vision, that help to grow football, right? So I just want to let you know that I do love that about you.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And honestly, even though I'm talking about opportunities, I always say I'm so grateful to the McMaster football community, to all the coaches there for this opportunity. When I was asked to come back this season, again, it was an immediate yes. I was so excited just to be, a coach again for another season with the Marauders. So my goals at Mac are just to really grow as a coach there, to learn their system and to be able to contribute even more every year. When I watch Coach Grant or Coach Potasic break down film, for example, it's just so mesmerizing. I want to learn how to do that. I want to have that skill set and be able to talk to that level of strategy and technique that they do when we're doing our, when we're prepping for a game or reviewing after a game. That's just one example, but there's so many things that I still have to learn. And to be able to have that opportunity at McMaster, I'm just enjoying where I am right now.
Yeah. No, I think you provided, again, some simple and powerful reminders. The power of being in the here and the now. That was the one thing I heard. And two, like, I really get a sense and I can really feel that open mind, right? Like I said, the mind's like a parachute, works best when it's wide open. You can just tell you're just like a sponge to learn from people who have, had some different life experiences.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, we've talked about being a daily learner and always being curious. I know I read that in your book as well. So I really related to that. And, going on top of that, it's that element of personal growth. I think if we want to be a daily learner and constantly learning, we have to be filling our own cups. We have to be doing our personal growth and helping us get better as people as well, not just as coaches on or off the football field, but adding in that personal growth element, I think definitely elevates your game and elevates the amount that you're able to contribute and help others.
Love it. Couldn't have said it any more beautifully. So, Coach, again, I know that you are constantly sharing inspiration, that you're constantly sharing words of wisdom, encouragement. How can people connect with you? How can they support you and what you're growing? What's the best way people can connect with you?
You can connect on Instagram. I have a coaching Instagram page. So it's coach_Taylor_football. So you can find me on Instagram, or come on out to a McMaster football game. Like I say, we have a women's tournament this Saturday at Laurier, next Saturday at Mac. Or come on out and support Team Ontario. If you don't want to fly to Saskatchewan, we have ID camps and development camps throughout May and June as well.
So I would encourage everyone. One of the things I love about Coach MacIntyre is she's always sharing, she's always celebrating the wins of others, right? Like she's always sharing like positive stuff. And it's just really great to see just how you're shining your light on other people as well. So that's always great to see.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Coach, I want to take a moment. I want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for the woman you are, the amazing daughter you are, the amazing significant other, teacher, coach, mentor, but most importantly, the amazing human being you are. The one thing I've really come to admire about you is how you choose to be the change. And you choose to be a shining light on this world, in this world. And the best part is you choose to be a shining light and you shine your light on other people so they can shine brighter. So I think it's just a great reminder on what the game of life is about. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And honestly, like I say, I think it's important to have representation at all levels in sport, but also specifically for females and girls in football. I don't take this responsibility lightly, but I try and just open up the doors and let all people know that there's a place for them in football. So football is for everyone. So I really appreciate you saying that. And, I just always value the relationships that I make, and that includes with you and with Football Ontario. So I really look forward to continuing to work with you and, building up football in all aspects throughout the province.
Definitely. And the amazing part is the thing that gets me energized and enthused is we're just scratching the surface, right?
We definitely are.
We're going to have this conversation, and who knows what this conversation will be like in the next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Again, beautiful. Could just be beautiful. So, folks, Coach Taylor dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom. And here's my reminder to you. Knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of that great knowledge that actually creates great results. So my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And by doing that, you will reach your next level of greatness. And as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And here's my ask. The more people we can have listening to, hearing, seeing these simple ideas, and the more people we have putting them into practice, it's going to make this world shine even brighter. So my ask is that you go share this conversation with someone you feel that needs to hear it. As always, I look forward to chatting with you next time in the huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day.